the phenomena of Nakba, but the phenomena in Nakba in a kind of a global perspective, meaning that we all know about the Palestinian Nakba. I can tell you that even in Israel, most students speak about the Palestinian Nakba. Most people do not even know about the Jewish Nakba. I mean, I guess the people here know about it, but generally speaking, most people do not even know what happened. They are not familiar with the phenomena. Now, in order to understand the whole phenomena of what happened, Palestinian Nakba, Jewish Nakba, we have to remember actually historically what happened. What is a story? Because when people do not understand, they have this kind of political attitude that we will see in a minute, which is totally wrong, needless to say. Anyway, I'm going back more than 100 years ago. The world was actually ruled by mainly empires. When the world was ruled by empires, a lot of peoples, we can see there's so many empires that most of them, of course, during the time collapsed. And in what we call today Israel or Palestine, there was not any state, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. If you will look at the map, historical maps, any kind of map, you will not find the name Palestine. Even in what was Palestine, it was Wadiyat, Sanjak, which mean districts, but not a state. Anyway, in many places in the world, people were looking for self-determination. They did not want to live under any imperial rule. And when people looked for kind of independence, they were looking for self-determination. Now, just to speak about what was in Palestine, there are many sources about what was in that piece of land. Maybe some of you know about Mark Twain and his book, where he did not find anything, and some other kind of tourist stories. But the most reliable source about what was in Palestine in that time was the PEF, which is Palestine Exploration Fund, that was established in Britain. Why? Because they were interested in what is happening, nothing to do with colonialism or imperialism. They just wanted to know what is the story of that piece of land that was, by the way, in their mind, in Europe, among Christians in the United States. There were a lot of kind of Zionist movements before the Zionist movement was even begun. An unknown story that can be found in research, but I'm not going to speak about it. Anyway, they sent a big delegation to Palestine in order to explore the country. And you can see what was Jerusalem, you can see only what you see in red. This is the old city. You can see what was Tel Aviv, nothing except the old city of Jaffa, and so on and so on. In that time, when the Ottoman Empire actually ruled this piece of land, there was an agreement between Hussein, the sheriff of Mecca, and McMahon about establishing a huge Arab state. And you can see here the map of what was supposed to be the Arab state. Now, it's very interesting. Even according to their original map, they excluded Palestine from the map. Why? Because of one reason. It was before the Balfour Declaration. It's very interesting to emphasize. Before the Balfour Declaration. Why? Because this piece of land, it was clear, is supposed to be for the Jews. And I mean, some people say it was clear to the colonial powers, maybe. No, it was clear also to the Arabs in that time. It was the sheriff of Mecca, Hussein, who said that the Jews are streaming to Palestine. They knew that the country was for its original sons, Ibn al-Asanin. And it went on. Before the Balfour Declaration, we have to know, there was a declaration, the same kind of declaration by the Quai d'Orsay, the foreign ministry of France, declaring actually the same kind of things that the Jews deserve. Their own self-determination and a national house. And it went on, of course, to the Balfour Declaration. And it went on and on to the 14 points of Woodrow Wilson. So what is the story? Actually, the story is that because of the very simple reason that a lot of peoples were asking for independence and for self-determination, the idea of self-determination was accepted by the global world opinion. I mean, it was accepted that people should have self-determination. And it was accepted. And you cannot understand the Balfour Declaration without understanding the collapse of empires that enabled self-determination to many peoples around the world, not only in this area. Why it is so interesting, why it is so important? It is so important because of the very reason that so many scholars here, not only here, but of course in the United States, keep on saying that Zionism is colonialism. Zionism is imperialism. No. To the contrary, it's the opposite. Why it is the opposite? Because the whole idea of self-determination was against imperialism and against colonialism. It's the way of peoples to deliberate themselves from the empires and any kind of foreign rule. So Zionists, Jews, who felt that they are, of course, a minority in the empires, felt minority again when nation states were established. So the whole phenomenon of Zionism was part of so many other movements that were looking for the very simple idea of self-determination. It went on and on when in 1919, actually, an agreement was signed between Faisal, the son of the Emir of Mecca, and Weizmann. And you can see in the map what was supposed to be the border of the upcoming new state, Israel. Bigger than the great Israel of today. And it went on and on and on when the idea of Jewish homeland was accepted, of course, by the League of Nations, before that even by the San Remo summit, and when we are speaking about legal aspects of the Jewish state of Zionism, here we can find it. Now, what happened when empires collapsed? The main phenomena was a huge wave of population exchange. Speaking about Turkey and Greece, we are speaking about almost 2 million people that were forced out Nobody wanted, by the way, to leave his homeland just because any agreement or a new state, self-determination. They were forced to leave. When I'm saying forced to leave, it was followed by so many atrocities, pogroms, massacres, unfortunately. And it went on and on and on. Speaking about the Second World War, we're speaking about more than 12 million ethnic Germans that were actually expelled from all the surrounding countries. It went on and on and on. Poland, Ukraine, 1.4 million. It went on. India, Pakistan, speaking about 14 million people. And even in the second half of the previous century, we are speaking about 250,000 people that became refugees from Cyprus and Armenia, Azerbaijan, a conflict that is still going on and produced more than 1 million refugees, their own Nakba. And it went on and on and on and on. Only in the Balkans, we are speaking about 7 million people that were forced out from their homelands. Now, it was not only something that practically was carried out, it was also legitimized by the international community. This person, for example, he received a Nobel Prize for Peace, Fridtjof Nansen, because he organized part of the population exchange between Turkey and Greece. And much more important, the Permanent Court of International Justice in the 30s decided upon that population exchange is the best solution in order to achieve peace. And it went on and on. The Peel Commission, the first British commission that came to Palestine in order to find the solution, they also agreed upon that there will be a population exchange between Jews and Arabs in order to enable an Arab land and a Jewish, an Arab state and a Jewish state. Labour Party in Britain that was the power in Palestine, the ruling power in Palestine, they adopted the idea of transfer of population exchange in order to solve the problem between Jews and Arabs. Winston Churchill, the most important leader in 1944, he declared expulsion is the way to solve conflicts between nations. Now, it is very interesting because also some Arab leaders in the area adopted the idea of population exchange and so on. We don't have time because my time is limited and I needed 7 hours in order to give all of what I wanted, but we don't have the time. Anyway, a lot of Arabs agreed upon that this is the best way. And I skip because we don't have time. What did we have also in the background? We have the Mufti, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who collaborated with the Nazis, who was a Nazi himself, and who declared our fundamental condition for cooperating with Germany was a free hand to eradicate every last Jew from Palestine and the Arab world. Here we see the Mufti is trying actually to export the Holocaust to the Arab world. Now, this is the background. The founder of the Muslim Brothers declared in Cairo, if the Jewish state becomes a fact, the Arab peoples will drive the Jews who live in their midst into the sea. Now, the Arab League Secretary General declared about what? About extermination of the Jews if a Jewish state will be established. And it went on and on and on. We don't have time for all of it. And the Arab League decided upon that Jews are going, from Arab countries, are going to pay the price. And the New York Times headline the day after the Jewish state was declared, Jews in grave danger in all Muslim lands. And a huge wave of pogroms was carried out. It was already mentioned, so we can continue with, but a lot of destruction, a lot of massacres, and so on, and so on, and so on. It was already mentioned. The outcome, as we all know, was that because of the war, the independence war of Israel, Israel accepted the partition resolution. It was rejected by the Arabs. The outcome was that I'm taking the number of the UN, even if there is a big debate about how many Arab refugees became because of the war. Anyway, 711,000 Arabs. I'm saying Arabs, I'm not saying Palestinians, I will explain. And a bigger number of Jews, as was already mentioned, became refugees. They fled, they were expelled, and in most places, their property was confiscated. And this is the outcome, actually. Now, but we have to bear in mind that when they came to Israel, Jews, they lived in ma'abarot. What is ma'abarot? Ma'abarot is like refugee camps, but no, they were not called refugee camps. They were called ma'abarot because ma'abarot, some of you know Hebrew, it's a kind of a transit camp. No, you're not going to be refugees. It's going to be for a short while, and then it will be over. But they lived for years as refugees, actually. Now, we don't have time. Now, just to bear in mind that the property of Jews, the land that Jews owned in Arab countries was bigger than the whole land of Israel. I mean, the whole land of Israel altogether is something like 21 square kilometers. The land of Jews that was left behind was of something like 5 times bigger. 5 times bigger. Totally forgotten. You will not hear one student here in the United States that is studying in the Middle East programs, faculties, that know something about it. Here is how so many scholars manipulate history. Just manipulate history. And it's going on and on and on and on. I skip it because we don't have time. Just to remember one thing. More than 60 million people became refugees because of collapse of empires, because of establishing nation states. More than 60 million people. Among them, yes, Arabs and Jews. But it's very interesting. No one out of the 60 million is a refugee today. It's over. 1, 2, 3 years, you can be a refugee, and this is it. Not the Arabs. They became refugees forever. Right now, according to UNRWA, there are 5.5 million people. They are growing and growing.
Because they come those next generation,
not next and third generation and fourth generations, and they are becoming more and more. Why? Because one of the reasons, not the only one reason, one of the reasons was that one of the reasons is that the UN established 2 agencies. One is UNRWA, specified only for the Arab refugees from Palestine. And the other one is, of course, the Commission, the UNHCR, which is dealing with all the refugees of the world. And the outcome is that, I skip because we don't have time, the UNHCR actually solved the problem of more than 50 million people who were refugees, and UNRWA did the opposite. They not only perpetuated the problem, they created new generations of refugees. The best thing in order to solve the refugees problem is to stop funding UNRWA. But nobody is doing it, of course. They perpetuate the problem by funding them again and again. Put them under the umbrella of the UNHCR, and we will not have a problem anymore. But nobody wants to do it because of political reasons, as we all know. And it's going on and on and on and on. We don't have time for all of that because my time is running out. Anyway, just to remind us all, what really happened is that what is left in the global conscious about the Nakba is that, for example, I guess some of you, the Americans among you maybe know the name, Professor John Mearsheimer. The Nakba is one of the great crimes of modern history. I don't know how to call it. It's not only a lie, it's a kind of a blood libel against Israel. I mean, what they do, something very serious. They single out Israel. They single out Israel. And the story of the population exchange between Arabs and Jews. And then they create a monster which is called the Nakba. Hey, but 60 million people experience a kind of Nakba. How come that you don't speak about them? How come? But this is a way of wash-braining that is taking place, unfortunately, here in many other places. And when I speak with Jewish young students here in campuses, they have no idea. And part of the problem is that for them, the whole idea of nation-state is not clear. I mean, here we are in a kind of a melting pot, and what are you talking about? And they do not understand that the whole idea of nation-state was the solution against imperialism. And the whole phenomenon of Nakba, it was part of the process. Nobody wanted to be expelled from his homeland. But this is the outcome as part of the struggle against imperialism. And it's going on and on and on when we don't have time, but we see what is happening today in the propaganda against Israel. They are carrying, like we have the keys to our homes, and demonstrations, and so many scholars, we don't have time to see all of them speaking about the rights of the refugees, and so on. Nobody is speaking about the right of the Jewish refugees. What about their property? There is a huge difference, by the way, between the refugees from Palestine and the refugees from the Arab countries. The difference is very simple. Jews never declared war on the hosting, on the original countries. Arabs in Palestine declared war of extermination. And as we all know, and I'm saying it if some of you don't know, for example, in Sudetenland.
What happened to your mic?
You hear me or not?
Yeah.
You hear?
Yeah. Ken Pablo.
Okay. It's very interesting because there are millions of refugees. They do not receive their property back, even according to the international law. But there are some groups, one of them is of course Jews, that receive their property back. Why? Because if you are the victim, you have the rights for compensation. You have the right to receive your property back. But not if you are the attacker, if you are coming from the aggressor side. And this is the difference. For example, Jews receive their property in the Sudetenland, in the Czech Republic, but not ethnic Germans. And there are so many verdicts, rules about it. And it's going on and on and on and on and on and on. Here we can see how the whole phenomena of right of return, like if this is the most important thing, and Nakba denial as much as a crime as Holocaust denial, and so on and so on and so on. Unfortunately, many times we are speaking about Israeli scholars who disseminate this kind of propaganda. And the most famous one, the most popular one is Ilan Pappé, Professor Ilan Pappé. And who keeps on saying about Israel committing a crime, Israel committed genocide and that kind of stuff. We don't have time to go to the story of Ilan Pappé and the huge damage that he creates. And with this propaganda against Israel, I can just say that Professor Benny Morris, who used to be his friend, by the way, 20, 30 years ago, published an article about his most popular book that in every faculty about the Middle East, they learn here. And he published a review about his book, and where he said that actually he did not find one page without manipulation or lie. Unfortunately, this is what the students here receive. And the struggle against it, I call it Industry of Lies, and I published a book by the name Industry of Lies, but the struggle against it is not simple and not easy. We don't have, of course, to give up, but, I don't know somebody about the time, how long do I have, if I have time at all?
Keep going.
Hmm?
No, keep going.
What? Okay, they give me 5 minutes, okay. No, because if they will not give me 5 minutes, I'm not going to leave you for the whole afternoon, so it's better to limit me. And I have to say something about why I call them Arab refugees. I call them Arab refugees because under the British mandate, the only Palestinians were the Jews. My parents who grew up under the British mandate, they were Palestinians. Every Jewish institution in that time was called Palestine something. Palestine Post, it's the Jerusalem Post of today. Palestine Bank is the National Bank of Israel today. Needless to say that it was established by Jews in London, and so on and so on. The Arabs in Palestine call themselves, define themselves as Arabs, because Palestinians were the Jews. The name Palestine was used by Christians, not by Jews and not by Arabs, and not by Muslims. So the whole idea of Palestine in that time was something that belonged to the Jews, not to the Arabs. But it is not clear because many people here in the United States, okay, you occupied the Palestinian state. We did not occupy any Palestinian state. Because there was not any Palestinian state, there was not any Palestinian identity. But, there's so many lies that so many students are exposed to, it's frightening in a way. It is frightening. They have no idea what they are talking about. Needless to say that the main problem, I will just say some words about the peace process. Yes, we need peace. Yes, we need reconciliation with the Arabs. Needless to say. And we had some peace initiatives in the last more than 20 years. Ehud Barak, it was in Camp David Summit in 2000. Immediately after, it was Bill Clinton with his own plan, and on and on. Ehud Olmert in 2008, Barack Obama and John Kerry in 2014. And let me tell you something. It all failed not because of Israel. Israel never said no. I mean, I can go back to Peel Commission and to the partition resolution, when Israel said yes and the Arabs said no, but they kept on saying no. Not because of the settlements, by the way. And you can have any idea, any political idea about the settlements as you want. Fair enough. But it was not because of the settlements. It's because of one demand, which is called right of return. Right of return. Right of return. So the problem of the refugees, that it's not 700,000 anymore, it's more than 5 million. Now, they say, and they repeatedly saying it, we ask for the right of return just in order to achieve the destruction of Israel. So we have to know it. We have to know the basics in order to understand that the whole phenomena of Nakba, Palestinian Nakba, Jewish Nakba, first of all, was part of history of so many nations. 60 million people passed it. And we have to know that the only one singled out people is the Palestinian people. Why? Because the international community did not adapt the solution that was to all other conflicts. And here we are. And here we are. We have to know the basic facts in order to continue. Thank you very much for listening.